these negative thoughts and you stop writing your excellent piece and it was bound to be excellent. So what do you suggest to people who have this problem? When they start writing something and they lose interest.
Yep.
What do you suggest to keep that interest?
Yeah. Annie Lamott, the author, she has a book on writing called Bird by Bird, and in it she has this essay, you can Google it, it's free, it's online. It's called Shitty First Drafts. And I teach it in all my writing classes because she kind of goes there and talks about how it doesn't matter how many books you've written, prizes you've won, all this, like, there are times where you are facing that blinking cursor on the computer and you're just like, this sucks. And so you get up and you eat something, or you vacuum, or you're like, I'm gonna feed the cat again, or anything to avoid doing the work. But at the same time, you also love it. Like you said, it just kind of goes up and down. So she has this process of having shitty first drafts, which she calls the down draft. And then you can come back to it, and it's the up draft. Where can I, expand on this passage? Or how can I look at just dialogue? Well, I'm just going to look at the beginning, And so you kind of have these micro assignments for yourself. And then there's the updraft, which is where you're like really looking at, like making every word fight for its life on the page, looking at grammar, all that stuff. But that doesn't all happen at the same time. So that's helped me a lot. I'm like, you know what, Jen? All right, you're just going to get to this next draft, and I'm going to give it to a reader. And that accountability is huge. So if you're part of a writing group, even if it's one other person, you're like, hey, can we trade work? I'm going to send you a draft by November 1st. Then it's in your head, and you're like, I'm not writing this whole excellent story, I'm just writing this draft. And it gets it to the next iteration. And that's how things become excellent. It's by kind of moving down the line. But in short, you have to trick yourself. That's a great question. There's all these hands. Somebody I haven't heard from yet. Yeah.
Who gives you the most useful criticism?
Useful criticism, my husband. He is a fabulous reader. And that's how we met. We met through writing. And we met at this creative writing center called Grub Street. If you don't know about it, it's amazing. Grub Street, one word. I know it's kind of a weird name. It's in Boston, and it's right on the Common. They're moving actually in May to the Seaport. And they are a creative writing organization. They have classes in fiction, nonfiction, poetry, screenwriting, graphic novels, how to use storytelling, make podcasts. Like, they have everything. And a lot of the classes are paid, you have to pay, but many of them are free. And they have free Saturday classes, they have brown bag lunches where they give you snacks and drinks, and you just show up and somebody gives you prompts and you write. They have online classes. It's a real great community too. They have parties, they have a big conference in April, and if you actually want to volunteer, help pass out programs or wear a school t-shirt and direct people to the right session, then you can go to the conference the other days for free. So ask me about that. That's how I started doing stuff. I just kind of like weaseled my way in whatever way I could. And then you start to build your resume and all that. Yes?
Is from in Ashes, Gracilia, she remembers everything, but so is she repressing seeing her father leave, or is her mother just taking out, do they both know and the mother's just taking out her frustration, or they both just not know?
Yeah.
Or is it just open for interpretation?
I think it's open, but I like what you said. that works. I mean, the mother repressing, I think the mother probably knows. The way I had it in my mind was that, yeah, she remembers everything, so it's like, how could she not remember where her father went? Like, she's saying that it didn't happen. Like, she can't imagine her father doing that. So maybe he was kidnapped, maybe, there are a number of different things. So I think that if I go back to it, I could write the next. Now you're inspiring me, thank you. Do we have time for a couple more? Yeah. All right, great, yes and yes.
So I feel like often the hardest part for me when I'm writing something is like the beginning.
Yeah.
How do you like start with an idea?
Yep.
And how do you like make like a seed into a flower, I guess?
Yes. Sort of like this with Ashes, right? I heard the story about this woman I met. I couldn't believe that image. It started with an image. Like, she's giving birth in a row of cots with other women. They're in various stages of labor. I'm like, I can't. So it stuck with me, right? There's a seed. Months later, I'm still thinking about it. And then one day I was like, okay, what if she gives birth? Okay, lots of people give birth. What's special about that? Well, what if this baby that she's giving birth to has this cool superhero ability and she can remember everything? So then I was like, let me just write the scene where she's being born. And then it kind of grew from there. So sometimes that's the entry point, the image. Sometimes it's a prompt. Like when you take classes, sometimes the instructor at the beginning will be like, write 5 minutes about, write a scene where you have a spilled cake in the middle of the road, go. And my students are like, okay, all right, let's just write. They'll come up with totally different scenarios. But your subconscious has all this material, it's like dying for these prompts. And then they kind of like build off of each other. There are books that have lots of these prompts, websites. I mean, it could be anything. It could be like, okay, write a scene where a character is in a car and finds something unexpected in the glove compartment. Go, 15 minutes, right. Right, it's kind of cool, and everybody's story would be different. And maybe it's a scene that becomes part of a larger story. So I just kind of, again, trick myself into that. And then sometimes reading. Like I'll read really cool stories or books and I'll be like, damn, that's good. How did the author do that? And then I will literally copy the paragraph into a document and then I substitute, like Mad Libs, but reversed, you know? I take out words and then I imagine like if I wrote this, how would I do it differently? Again, it's just another way into the sandbox.
I know from personal experience from reading as well as writing, so my source everyone has their own unique sort of writing style, and judging by some of your work, you also can have your own unique writing style. How do you come up with that? Like, what's the process behind coming up with a writing style that you feel is your own?
Yeah, it takes time. I would say I wrote a bunch of shitty first drafts, and I also wrote a bunch of stories that I thought sounded like what a writer, quote unquote, should sound like. I mean, I was really guilty of that. I was like, I'm gonna be this serious writer. And it sounded saccharine, fake, you know, kind of like, that's not me. But I read stories like that and I was like, well, maybe that'll get me an A, or maybe this is what I'm supposed to sound like. And then I went to a writing conference in San Francisco, a Writers of Color workshop, and Juno Diaz was my instructor, summer after summer after summer. And this guy will tell it how it is, okay? So I remember my first class, I asked him, I raised my hand, I had a little notebook that I bought, my little pen, and I'm like, I'm gonna learn everything about writing in 5 days, right? So here I am on day 1, and I'm like, excuse me, are we going to get a syllabus for the week? And he looked me dead in the eye, and he just wore jeans, a black hoodie, white t-shirt, that was like his uniform. And he looked me dead in the eye, and he said, we are the syllabus. And I'm like, okay, great, no problem, great. I just was like, and the whole week was like that. I mean, there was one time where he's like, this is how you're gonna know if you're a serious writer, Jen. Can you do it? Because I was really sensitive, I took everything painfully personal. And he's like, it's not that serious, you know, and you do have to develop a thick skin. And then once I found my own voice, it happened when I felt like I stopped caring what other people were going to think. I was like, I really don't care what other people are going to say about this story. It sounds like I want to write from a voice that is authentic to me. So, for instance, I wrote a novel about a teen girl, and you guys are the first people to ever see this cover, so don't take a picture of it and blast it on social media, not that you would. But basically, this is about a teen girl who grew up in Jamaica Plain, and it's called Don't Ask Me Where I'm From. It's a young adult novel. I tried to write this story in so many different ways, I can't even tell you. And then one day, I was like, you know what? I've just like exhausted everything. I don't know what else to do. I'm gonna like give up. But there's that piece in me that was like, no you're not, no you're not. And then I just sat down and I'm like, what would a teen girl sound like, really, if she didn't care what you thought about her? And I thought of my students. I used to teach high school and middle school. And oh my God, they would tell you what they think and they don't care. And so I could hear their voices in my head, and I was like, all right. And so I started just writing, okay? Writing. Like, what does she have to say about this and that? And I gave her a real attitude, real voice. And she was like dropping F-bombs and talking about this and that, and that's when I felt like I clicked into the energy of the story. And then the writing came much easier. That's not to say I didn't revise it like crazy, but it's once I sort of stopped putting that pressure on myself, like, this has to be good. This better sound like a writer. Like, what does that even mean? So then once I started writing with this true teen voice, my editor was like, she's popping off the page. Like, I'm afraid of her. And I'm like, good. So I'll leave that there. And I do actually want to tell you more about Framingham State.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also when the book is coming out.
Oh yes, it comes out in May 5th, and we're going to have a big launch at Grub Street in the Seaport. So I'll tell you all about it, and you can pass on the information. But I'm going to be in as many places as I can possibly be. And check out my website. It's being redone right now, but and I have to get better at social media. But I'm trying. Yes.
So when you're planning to publish a book, like how far in advance did you have to finish like the writing portion of it before like all the stuff that heading into release does?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you asked that, because I didn't even know to ask that question. Never mind in college. Like, I just learned about this not that long ago, because it's different for every book and every publisher and everything. But with this book, I wrote the draft. First it started as a short story, and then I'm like, I'm gonna make this a novel. Changed it, because I had it set in the 90s, and people were like, that's historical fiction. And I'm like, oh my God. So I made it contemporary, which means I had to do a lot of research. And my agent sent the manuscript out, meaning she emailed it to like 15 editors, hoping that at least one would bite, say, I'm interested, I want to make an offer. And so what happened was several of them were interested, and I started having phone calls with them. This happened in January 2018. So almost 2 years ago. And this was the craziest week of my life. I'm like having these phone calls, oh my God. And then so we had an auction, which means that people bid their highest amount, and then we talked about which one we wanted to go with. And I'm like, highest one, right? So, but she's like, sometimes you don't always want to do that, whatever. Anyway, so we went with Caitlin DeLuey, who's an editor at Simon & Schuster. Amazing editor. She buys the book. I don't see the contract or the first part of the advance. The advance is what you get paid, and they break it up into 4 chunks, at least they did with me. I didn't see that until May. So January to May, right? So it takes a long time. She sent me her notes, 20 pages, single-spaced letter. Dear Jen. And it was like a lot of praise, but then after like page 2, it got into like, this is what you gotta work on. And she mailed the manuscript to me, covered in green ink, like dripping. And I'm like, all right, okay. You know what, I can do this, roll up my sleeves. I worked on it for 3 months, sent it back to her. She takes some time, sends it back. We went back and forth like this 8 times. And so yeah, it can take that many times. I like to tell everybody that, because there's this like, some misbelief that books fall out of the sky, and it's like you wrote it like that the first time. It's like, nope, definitely not. Framingham, yes, okay, so thank you. All right, so I teach at Framingham State University, which is an honor because I grew up in Framingham, so I feel like it's coming full circle. And we have a great university, and the English department is just full of professors who are like really dedicated, warm, like people who want to teach, who really are like, I get to teach, not like, oh, I have to teach, right? And the students are my favorite part about this job, because everyone's really motivated, dynamic. They work like hell. I mean, they work on campus, they work outside, they are taking multiple classes, they're double majoring, you know, so many things. And so the creative writing program, we offer classes in fiction, nonfiction, poetry, sometimes a mix of all 3. Sometimes the classes have 20 students, sometimes they're small and have like 8 students. so you can get a lot of attention on your work. We have a creative writing club, we have a literary magazine, we have internships we can help partner you with, and then there are field trips. It's really dynamic. We have readings, like this week we have on Friday night, and if you want to know more specifics, I'm more than happy to share. But take a brochure. And we also have an Arts and Ideas speaker series. So for instance, in the spring semester, we'll have authors like Raina Grande, Clint Smith, Grace DeLucin. I mean, that's a big part of this if you want to learn more about writing. Like, take the initiative, turn off Netflix for a night and say, you know what, I'm going to go to this reading. I'm going to just do it. And you never know what might click, what seeds might be spread that night, and tips you can pick up over the years really add up. So I'll leave these here too. And again, any questions, please ask me. I'll put my personal email here because I know sometimes it's hard navigating and figuring it all out. But we need more writers, more creative writers in this world, and we need our stories shared. So thank you so much for being such an amazing audience, and I hope to see you again soon.
Thanks so much. Please grab a drink, snack, chat. She's here to chat with you, answer questions, pick up brochures. Also want to note that those interested, our next reading in the series, Maggie Dietz, poet, will be reading in Lowell on Thursday, November 7th at 12:30. We also have an open poetry and fiction reader for those writers interested in having that voice heard in this room on November 23rd. We also have an open poetry and fiction reading on December 3rd in Lowell. So hope to see many of you at some of those. Thanks again.